Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new review, and today I'm going to be talking about Madam Web, which is directed by S.J. Clarkson, which is now out in cinemas worldwide, and I'm here to give my thoughts on the film having seen it today. Whether this upload gets up on time, I don't know, but I have seen it, I have witnessed it, I have heard what people have said, I've read what people have said. I've been very curious to watch this film. You'd have asked me 2-3 weeks ago would I have been curious, I'd have probably said no. It's another SPUMC film. For those that aren't familiar, that's the Sony Pictures Universe and Marvel characters, because of course Sony have to put the name in before anything else pops up. But I'll be getting into a little bit of that behind the scenes later on. But as always, I do want to hear from people at home, so please do comment your thoughts on Madam Web if you've seen the film. If you have intentions of seeing the film, your thoughts on it, your thoughts of the character, the history of the character, that's something I'm going to be bringing up in very briefly, because this is a very weird film to have seen. It's a very weird film to have ever been made, and if I'm really honest, I don't know how this film has been made, and that's kind of me diverting into what I know of the character of Madam Web. Growing up, like many others of my generation, we watched the 90s Spider-Man cartoons, and we all knew Madam Web as the really old person in the sunglasses setting up all the other stuff down the line. It's been a few years since I've watched it, but I always had the distinct image of her on the web with the glasses. And you know, as a kid in that sort of day, Wild Wide Web, all that sort of stuff, I don't know if that was in that as well, but visually it was a memorable character. And I never really saw her since. We haven't had her in films. I haven't watched modern Spider-Man cartoons. I don't know if she's in them. I haven't read modern comics. I don't know how much she's in it. But my understanding is Madam Web has had a very, very small history within Spider-Man. It's a character that has been in stories, but it hasn't had the history that so many other characters do. So an announcement of a Madam Web film to be part of the SPUMC universe, and I think they changed the name, but we're going to keep calling it that because they wanted it to be that. And yeah, the film got made. I don't know an awful lot about the behind the scenes. Stuff is coming out. I know that the press tour has essentially been Dakota Johnson being Dakota Johnson. Lots of unintentional or maybe intentional funny interviews, awkward moments. Terrible journalists that have been sort of mocked for trying to get viral comments going around. At the same time, we've also had a criticising the film about there being too many blue screens, about it sort of basically saying how terrible it was filming it, and so on and so on. So it's been an insane press tour, and I'll be really honest, the press tour has been the best thing about this film. I wasn't hyped to see it. There was no press screenings in the UK bar, I think, the junket press last week. There was no events, no fan screenings, or nothing like that. It was just boom out in cinemas Wednesday the 14th of February over here, and I have seen it today. I had plans. I wasn't going to put this out there to be at the forefront of the week's schedule and whatnot. And I just went along tonight to watch it at the cinema. I was going to go after work. It's a Friday. It's been a crap week at work. Let's sit back, relax, and figure this film out, because I have seen so many comments on about people that have seen it, people saying it's unintentionally hilarious, some people saying they actually like it, some people saying it's been sort of shat on a bit more than it probably deserves to be, some people saying it's one of the worst things they've ever seen. So it's really all over the place in terms of the discussion online, and that has tempted me to go to see it. I wasn't going to watch it at the cinema. I was just going to have a nice quiet weekend, but I thought, you know what, if it's going to be funny, and I enjoy films that are bad that they're funny, and I don't mean this in a really disrespectful way, but you see the discussions online is, you know, and I've said this before, you can have a great film that's entertaining, brilliant. You can have a great film that's boring, that's fine. You can have a terrible film that's entertaining, and you normally have a good time. But the worst possible film is a terrible film that is boring. And I can tell you all this. I didn't feel like that with Madam Web. I'm still laughing. My thoughts on the film, it is awful. It's a mess. I don't know where to begin with that mess. I think actually the answer is Sony, this stupid cinematic universe where they want to have a Spider-Man universe. Yes, Venom made money. Venom made money because it's Venom, because it had Tom Hardy. And Venom 3 is probably going to decline somewhat even more on that financial side of things. Yet we have had Morbius since, and now Madam Web. We have Craven coming out in October. Let's hope if Aaron Taylor-Johnson is going to be Bond, he is Bond before that film comes out. Otherwise, it will be absolute no chance of that happening. And I'm curious at what else they have planned. There was always murmurs for the Sinister Six film. Go back to the Amazing Spider-Man 2 days. They wanted to set everything up in that sequel. They wanted to do a cinematic universe one film in for a character that shouldn't really need one. That's just a fucking great character. People want to watch Spider-Man. And we are here with a Madame Web film before we've ever seen the Sinister Six on the big screen, which is sort of terrifying at the same time. And This is where it gets tricky talking about the film, because I don't normally come on to bash films, and this one in particular is too easy to bash. When the lead actress has sort of destroyed it on and off, you sort of hit a point where you just feel a bit sorry for it. It's like the horse that you see after the Grand National, where they just have to, take it out the back of the shotgun, and that's how I felt with this film. Is the Sony universe just needs to go that way now. It's not even funny anymore. It's just at this point of, how is this happening? How is this a thing? I know the budget for this is considerable. I think it's like a 60 or an 80 mil budget. And I have moaned about how bad the budgets have been recently. So you know what? Fair play, because this $80 million film looks like some of the $300 million films of the last couple of years. So at least that's one positive I'm going to give it. But at the end of the day, you can have a film with a terrible premise. You can have a film that maybe shouldn't be made. You can make a great film out of that, and many have done that in the past. Comic book films in particular. You can look at other films, other genres, films that shouldn't succeed have succeeded, both with financially or with critics or with anything, with fans or creating franchises from it. And this really isn't that. And there's only so far you can take the Spider-Man iconography, the Spider-Man logos and everything, without him ever turning up. You can literally have a villain such as this film, where he's basically in a Spider-Man suit, and he has some of the abilities of Spider-Man to an extent. Don't know the history of him in the comics. I'm trying to avoid doing spoilers. And then we've got the Mighty campaign, where we've got 3 Spider-Women who have been all over them for varying reasons. You've got, of course, Sydney Sweeney is going to be the most popular one with Anyone But You, that's been out recently, Euphoria, everything else. And it's really interesting that the marketing for this film has been about everyone in the spider costumes, and the film is never that. There's a minute, maybe max screen time of that. And I've got a feel for anyone that's been duped into going to this on those premises. People that think it's a Spider-Man film or anything like that. Yes, it's Madame Web, but there are going to be people that don't have a clue. And I think they're going to leave massive, I say disappointed. I mean, it'll be kids or anything. I don't care if I look disappointed, but, if they're going to expect people to see that sort of thing. Venom, at least you have Venom, and you have a lot of Spider-Man ability type things, but it's very weird seeing a Spider-Man-like character who basically can't shoot webs but can run, can jump, can do everything but the swinging. It's odd, it's weird, and I didn't know what to make of it, but a couple of things I want to talk about, and this has been in my head since I was watching it. I don't normally jump on this sort of stuff. I'll talk about the story, the origin of Madame Web, and by the way, casting Dakota Johnson as someone that is famous for being old, blind and paralysed. You're casting someone in their 30s who's non-blind, who's not paralysed, and this film is tricky because it's an origin, right? And in origin films, very much within story, characters earn their costume. So maybe this sounds horrible to say, but by the end of the film, she has earned being blind and being paralysed. And I was like, what? Like, that shouldn't be some great reward, but it led to one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen at a cinema. And I did laugh out loud unintentionally, and I didn't mean to. But if you've seen the film, the final scene, you know what I mean. The moment you go into the apartment, it just felt like a sketch from SNL or something. Dakota Johnson in this moment, across the whole film, I don't know if she's in on the joke. I don't know if she's seen this dreadful screenplay. By the way, I've forgotten the writers' names, but everyone's talking about their track record of some of the abominations they've made. And it does make you wonder, how do some people still get jobs in Hollywood? Especially when you see that more than anything else. And some people will pick on some writers sometimes. They'll take 3 or 4, I think Chris Terrier's one, I could be wrong, but they'll take 3 or 4 scripts which are terrible, but they've had an incredible career elsewhere. But when I'm talking, you've made like 6 or 7 films and they are all terrible. Evaluation needs to be met because there are talented writers who would never get a look in. And I'll be really honest, for I don't want to call it a Spider-Man film, but for Madame Web, or I guess like a Spider-Man universe, a SPUMC universe, whatever you want to call it, there would probably be writers that knew these characters that would have liked to have told the story. So it just makes you wonder how this dross keeps churning out of Hollywood, and it's really awkward to talk about, it's awkward to think about, because the films existed. But I will say this, I watched Morbius for the first time the other day. This was better than Morbius as a film. It doesn't have a great dancing scene like Morbius does, that is something memorable and entertaining and lives long in the memory. It hasn't had a destructive meme like It's Morbin Time, which Sony famously misinterpreted, re-released it in the cinemas for it to bomb a second time. Madame Web, something else. There is a story there. And I genuinely think the story is not as bad as I thought. It's the script, it's the dialogue. It's the character choices, which again goes back into that writing process. There is inherently a story in there, but it is locked by some of the worst writing. You saw probably the trailer line going viral. That's been edited in the film, and when you're expecting the line about in the Amazon before she died, it then cuts to another shot. And there's one thing I don't want to talk about in reviews is how awful the editing is. And on top of the editing, I have to talk about some ADR dialogue in this film. I've never felt more uncomfortable looking at a screen. I don't know if they put it through AI, but the mouths are moving, not even out of sync. It's like a character starts talking and then the mouth just starts to evolve. And it feels like the morph cut on Premiere Pro has been put on someone's mouth and they're trying to get the dialogue to come through, and it's awful. I've never seen something like this before. I have seen something like it before, but it's famous for it, which is The Room. But The Room is just out of sync. It's not trying to make it in sync. The Room is The Room. And I can't believe I'm comparing Madame Web to The Room, but here I am. I had a far more entertaining time watching The Room, but it feels tricky talking and reviewing this film, so this is sort of where I am. And sort of heading into final thoughts, I sort of have criticised this film a lot. Do I think it's good? No. Do you want to watch it at the cinema? If you enjoy watching films that are that bad, that you're entertained by them, maybe. Don't pay to watch it. If you're a member, if you're a Cineworld member, if you're a member of Odeon, all those sorts of schemes, fair enough. I wouldn't pay a singular penny. I mean, even getting the petrol over there is sort of bad enough. But this is not a film for anyone to rush to see, for anyone to ever need to see. Not that it needs to be setting something else up, but it's peculiar and it's strange, and there's no reason for why this has been made. I guess it's a miraculous achievement the film has been made in the first place, but yeah, it's not one people are going to be talking about as the years go by. I don't think one will be getting sequels for, and it's a stark reminder of how Sony are always the ones to defeat themselves with stuff such as this. It's weird. I'm in a weird state of mind talking about it. So I'm going to sort of stay out from this review. I know I've not spoken about too much about the cast, but really there's nothing more to add. I think that the cast aren't bad. I just think the source material is dreadful, and I'm left wondering, was Dakota Johnson in on the joke all along? But again, that final scene, I can't get it out of my head. It's SNL sketch hilarious. It will be everywhere when no doubt the HD rip comes out in a couple of weeks. They'll be getting this out of the cinemas straight onto online, try and make up any money they can. But yeah. It'll probably be one of the last times it's ever mentioned in a positive light. And listen, people might like this, and that's fine, that's okay. People are allowed to like films. But at the same time, people are also allowed to dislike films. And when you do see bad films, sometimes they're just bad. But as I said, I was entertained, at least, from how awful this was. And I'm hoping I don't have that on my next cinema trip, believe me, because that will be heartbreaking if the next film which the cinema's bad. Clearly a clue of what is to come, but that's me waiting to talk about it till next week, and sort of segueing out of this review. Obviously, I want to hear from people that's in the film. I just need to know people's thoughts. The fact there were no press screenings, the fact there I wouldn't have gone down to London to watch that press screening, but when PRs don't do screenings for multimedia, even for like influencers and stuff like that, that's normally a sign that they'd rather people didn't see it than see it and talk about it, and that's always a worry. And yeah, here we are. I can't wait to see the box office numbers. I can't wait to see what else goes down. I'm sure there are more behind the scenes stories. I wouldn't be surprised if we find that there were rewrites on set, stuff changing in post. As I mentioned, ADR. Some of it, I feel like they've made a room darker, so you can't see it's as obvious from their mouth, which sort of makes it worse, which makes it funnier and more creepy at the same time. So yeah, not how to do ADR for those that have done any of that. But that is going to round up this review. So once again, thank you all for watching. If you're curious about other things coming out, we've been previewing Dune, which is clearly going to be a different film to Madame Web. There's a great discussion on part 1 with me and Reese. We've had a recommendation of some films to watch. I've got a home media video going up in the next day or two as I'm just picking up some new films, so using some new companies. I'm going to talk about my experiences with that. And alongside that, we've also got a Dune Part 2 spoiler-free review coming, I think, next Wednesday night, and Drive to Survive at a similar time. Need to watch that too. So lots of TV, lots of film, lots of build-up, maybe one big special surprise, who knows. But that's going to do it for today. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.